Hello, everyone. I'm Pallavi Mehta, and you are listening to our Extraordinary Women in Tech podcast, the EWiT Diamond Member Edition, where you can hear inspiring stories of some very incredible women in tech from all across the world. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting Nicole Clendeninn, who's the VP of Program Management at IPSY. She's also led teams at Walmart prior to her role. Before we get into the conversation, if you are listening to this podcast on a podcast platform, be sure to follow us. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Nicole, welcome to our podcast. We're very excited to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Pallavi.
Awesome. Nicole, as we start into this conversation, I would love for you to share a little bit more about your journey. I know you've been a traveler, you've lived in some very interesting places, done very fun stuff. So can you just take us through your journey and, during this conversation, touch upon some pivotal points of your life which you felt really put you on a different trajectory?
Yeah, absolutely. Where do I start? So I went to college in Santa Clara. So I'm originally from Southern California, and I made my way up to the Bay Area. Fell in love with it there, and really was going to go to law school after Santa Clara. And I was taking, the LSAT, trying to get into law school. And then I just started to feel like it wasn't the right thing for me. And so my partner at the time was living in Vietnam. So he was like, why don't you come over here for a little bit? So I did, randomly. I didn't travel a lot before that. Ended up staying for about 4 months, got a job teaching English, really just loved it. But knew I had to also go back and get a job. My mom was like, you just graduated college, please come back. So I went back home and, tried to figure out what was next for me, moved back up to the Bay Area and got a job at Google, actually, working for Google Maps, just as a contractor, doing day-to-day stuff, trying to, again, figure out my life and what I wanted to do. And that's like the first time I really got into like the tech industry. Had no intention of it. It just happened to be that Google hired a lot of Santa Clara graduates. So it was perfect. And then eventually I was like, oh, I'm getting into like a full-time job, right? And so I was like, Walmart has a cool analyst role open for a new website they were trying to spin up for shopping. So I got that job, and I happened to just have a wonderful manager who saw a lot of potential in me, and he just kept giving me more and more and more. And so, like I said, I started as an analyst, and he was like, I think you would be a great product manager. Do you want to try it? And so I tried it out for a little bit, and I liked products, but I knew I was more focused on execution, right? And delivering, doing the stuff to get to an end goal and product. And so that's how I made my way into the technical program management. And then I just continued to grow, and I ended up under another wonderful manager who's now my mentor. And he just kept giving me new roles. So I just continued to grow and grow and grow. And then eventually, my husband and myself at that time decided, we needed to start a family. During our relationship, I was always very transparent that as a woman, having a family was very important to me, but also so was my career. And so as we entered this journey, I wanted to enter this journey as an equal partner. And so it wasn't that I was going to take a step back in my career. I wasn't asking him to take a step back in his career. It was that we were going to do this collectively and figure it out as we go and decide as we started to have more and more kids, is it the right time? I'm growing in my career. Is it going to impact our family? And so that was a pivotal moment for my journey as a woman, mother, not as a woman, I was already a woman, but as a mother in the tech industry, which takes a whole different role that I experienced. And so, and after every child, we again sit down and have this conversation of, is this the right time? Do we need to shift our careers? And actually, that's one of the reasons I left Walmart. Walmart was a wonderful company, and it's really where I grew up for 9 years. But honestly, it was a lot. It was very taxing. My role was working late nights, early morning, weekends. I knew when it was time to have my third child, I wasn't going to be able to sustain that and have the family life and the work life I wanted. And so I was approached by an old boss who was like, come to IPSY. The culture is wonderful. You can start a TPM organization from scratch here. And I was like, heck yeah. And it has been all of that and more for me. And so, 3 kids in, 3 years in at IPSY, and things are going well.
Oh, lovely. So, Nicole, from what I'm hearing from your journey, 3 things. First, you were very open to trying out new things, right? From law to technology to Google, and then to smaller startup and everything, all of that. So that's wonderful. My takeaway is, be open to challenges and then figure it out as you go. And
Yeah.
then juggling, like being very thoughtful of your role as a woman, as a mom, and as a career woman, balancing, managing. I think a lot of my listeners today will associate with that. And, a lot of the audience that we're trying to reach are maybe in this stage of life where they are figuring it out. So what I also heard is the role of mentors and good leaders in your career, right? So slightly digressing into, what would you advise to somebody who may not, okay, how to identify a good leader and how to pivot if you don't have one?
Yeah. I've been extremely fortunate in my career to have wonderful managers and leaders I was under. And how I attribute it to being a wonderful manager and leader for me is a few things. One, someone who trusts me and has my back, right? So the biggest thing, the scariest thing for a manager giving you new things is the fear of failure and being in trouble for it, right? And so, when I started taking on a chief of staff role, under my manager at Walmart, he said, I don't know how this is going to work, and we're going to make it work, and we're going to figure out what this role entails and what your scope is going to be. But if he was like, I want you to know, like, I will have your back no matter what decisions you make in this role, and I will defend you, and we'll fix it. If you screw up, we'll fix it. Don't worry about it. And having that, and I've had that in every manager I've had. So having that trust and that backing made me feel more comfortable to take risks, and knowing, again, if I messed up, it wasn't going to be a big deal. It wasn't going to be the end of the world. We'll learn from it and we'll grow. So I find that when you're looking, and even when you're interviewing and you meet a hiring manager, understanding the amount of autonomy and support that they put into their team is really important to understand. Because if you don't have that, I've found, and I've heard from just, working and mentoring other people, women and men, that's where the breakdown happens, right? And people don't necessarily leave companies, right? They leave their managers. So finding that is crucial and really important.
Wonderful. Nicole, I also know another fact about you is that you do lead diversity and inclusion programs at different, throughout your career, including now at IPSY. So any particular observations about how the DE&I programs succeed? What are the typical traps that organizations can fall into, and what has led to your success?
Yeah. So yes, I was fortunate to be able to start a women in tech organization at Walmart and now at IPSY. And it's funny, and they're two different sides of organizations too. Like at Walmart, I had pools of thousands of women because Walmart has hundreds of thousands of people. But like there is a lot of women to contribute. And at IPSY, it's a lot smaller, right? I think we have about 28 people in our group. And the biggest thing I told this group from what I learned at Walmart at IPSY was coming in and saying, the success of this group is based on all of us collectively. There's a core group of people who are pioneering this and making sure we have meetings and people coming into the support of our leadership team. But the real success of the Women in Tech organization depends on every single individual, whether you're the senior leadership organization or it's your first job here. Otherwise, we're not going to succeed. And so that's a big emphasis, is that when you start a group, it has to be a collective want. And we can't lean on just one or two people to really carry the group and come up with the topics and the ideas. It really has to be a group-led effort.
Yes, I see that. I totally see that. And I feel like every woman should understand and recognize that these platforms are for them to shine, right? And these are safe platforms for them to come up, talk about their insecurities, maybe what things that they are wondering, things that they are going through. And when they open up, I've been a part of some really big, very successful women who I found to be discussing the same topics that somebody much younger in their career is discussing. So the topics are all pervasive. They are still very relevant. So none of the upcoming women should feel scared of speaking up and participating, right? And that really brings the community together. Awesome. Very nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great to hear.
And I actually find it interesting to also hear from the younger women coming up, because, and a lot of times they're in a different generation, right? And so they're bringing different perspectives that some of us who've been in the industry for 10, 15 years don't have or are jaded from, and so there's such a unique aspect that the new upcoming women in the tech industry can bring that's not there today.
Oh my God, that reminds me of one more thing. Sometimes the things that they bring up, you wonder as a more senior woman in the industry. Sometimes I've wondered, like, oh my God, this is still a concern. This is still an issue, right?
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes they bring some really new problems, and sometimes you feel like we have still not solved this. After all these years
Absolutely.
and so many women empowered, there's so much more progress to be made. Lovely.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, very nice. Nicole, one more thing. I know that, we've all heard how nurturing meaningful relationships, not networking, but nurturing meaningful relationships is important in every facet of life. You lead the program management side for big organizations. And I'm sure in your role, it's even more important to nurture these relationships between stakeholders, right? Any learnings, any success tips that you have figured out and you would like to talk about?
So my core belief to establishing and nurturing credible relationships is really around reciprocity, where what you put in, you get out. So in the initial stages of relationship building, I really like to prioritize establishing trust and providing unwavering support to my stakeholders or anybody that I'm working with. So often this is going above and beyond my normal call of duty, or anticipating their needs and actively contributing to our mutual success. And why I do this is because this approach really creates a solid foundation of trust. And then I also know that then once I need something from them, I know I'll have their full commitment and full they'll be reliable for what I need, right? So it's give a little, then you get a lot back too. And so that's what I think is really important in creating a trusting and a credible relationship. In addition, in like a fast-paced environment, right? Effective communication is essential, right? We need to be able to communicate to our stakeholders and our leaders at the level of information that they need. So with managing numerous tasks and deadlines, transparency is critical. So I believe in over communicating, whether that be Slack through quick meetings or emails, just communicating early and frequently to ensure that they know that they're aligned with me. I'm going to give them all the information they need. They don't need to come look for it. Again, giving so that they can trust me, right? And that relationship's built. And then when I need something, I know the exact same thing's going to happen for me.
That's very beautifully said. And yes, it is. I think I've seen a lot of success out of it too. Like you give, and somehow everything just the universe does bring it back. And you're not looking to get it back, but it's the beauty of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Very nice. Nicole, how do you deal with ambiguity? Whether it's with a leader, whether it's with a situation, whether it's with with the input that you're putting into something, just ambiguity. What, like, do you trust in yourself and keep going? Do you go in with a lot of research? What's your approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes I panic. I'm not gonna lie. I have a moment of panic of like, okay, what do I need to do? What is happening? But then, I take a moment and I'm like, okay, I got it, right? I'm a huge person of asking questions. I ask a lot of questions up front because what I learned early on in my career is I want to go down a path of, especially if someone's asking something from me, I don't want to go down and complete it. And they're like, this is what I wanted, and then it was a waste of my time. Now everything's delayed. It was a waste of their time. So I will ask all the questions and remove the thought process of, is this a dumb question? And also, especially if there's a lot of people involved, right? So one thing I always tell my team too, I'm like, if you have this question, there's likely other people who have the same question that aren't going to ask it. So just ask it. It's okay. People are going to be like, thank goodness someone asked it, right? And the people that you're asking it to are going to be appreciative of the fact that you asked it ahead of time versus way down the line. So normally I get all my questions out of the way. And then I bring up my proposal or I'm putting my thoughts together for whatever I'm trying to do. And there's often a time I'll do a midpoint check-in too of like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is where I'm going. I don't need your help. I just want to make sure we're aligned on the direction. Do I need to pivot at all? And then if we're all good to go, then I execute and then roll it out. But the biggest thing, like I said, is asking questions. Don't feel like you're going to look stupid. Don't feel like someone's going to think you're stupid. Because again, it's just important to get that ambiguity out of the way early rather than waiting.
Because what I saw also was you were okay to be vulnerable, where you said, I panic, right? And as a leader,
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to have to have the confidence of saying that, even if it's a stupid question, it's okay. I'm putting myself out there. And I feel like they're not stupid questions. People who think of, oh, this may be a stupid question, they're basically simplifying a complicated topic and asking something very simple. But truly, in the bigger scheme of things, simplification is the basis of, figuring out a lot of problems. So
yes, exactly. Going to the basics.
Yeah.
where the answers are.
Yeah. So please, I think we should all be okay to ask the basic questions and then build on it. Right. And especially in bigger discussions, a lot of times it's okay to lose some pieces of information. So if you're asking a basic question which was answered very early on, have the confidence to still go out and say, hey guys, I still want to know, clarify this for me. And yeah. So
absolutely.
Talking about vulnerability, Nicole, there's a saying that leaders should not be shy of being vulnerable because that builds trust. But there's also the saying that leaders are looked upon, like people are like the managees or the junior people are looking up to leaders for the faith and for the confidence. So I feel like it's a dilemma. Should you be vulnerable or should you show confidence? And I got it, I know it. And what do you think? Have you ever wondered that?
I think there's a fine line in between. I agree. I've heard both, right? I think I tend to be more vulnerable with my team. And actually, sometimes I feel like that leads to more confidence because they know I'm being honest and open versus I got it. And, and it allows them to also identify with you too, right? If you're vulnerable, they're like, oh, okay, she's vulnerable too. And look, she's a leader. So I could get there even if I feel this way. So it's hard. I will say I'm not really the confident leader. Maybe people say I am. I don't know. Maybe that's how they look. But I always feel like I'm more vulnerable and being honest with my team. I mean, there's been time I go to my team after talking with our CTO and I'm like, yeah, I didn't understand that either. So, but we'll figure it out together, right? Mm-hmm. Or there's times where I they ask me a question and I'm like, I don't know the answer to that. Like, let's talk through it. Be my thought partner here and let's figure it out. And I think that allows people also the confidence to feel like they can work with a leader and have impact on a leader. It doesn't have to be top down all the time.
That's so true. And I think, yes, what you said is it doesn't always have to be top down. And by being vulnerable and putting it out there, like, I don't know, help me figure it out. It also gives them a sense of ownership, right? Because now they think of it as their problem too, instead of just saying, tell me what to do. Right. So when they take that sense of ownership, you're also as a leader inculcating leadership skills in them.
And then they believe in the solution too, because they helped come up with it, right? And there's no question about it.
Yeah. Or we refine, like, maybe I may not know the solution to start with, but somebody came up with a great idea. And with our experience, we can refine it.
Right.
Yeah. So that gives platform to the others to come up too. So very interesting. Super glad to hear of this. Nicole, again, going slightly off the script, any points of failure that you'd want to, share and say, I failed at that, but I still made it. If not that part. If not that project, this project.
I can't think of the specific project I was working on. It wasn't even a project, it was probably a new process. So when I was the chief of staff at Walmart, I was coming up with new processes, right? To better organize the organization and run the organization with my the SVP of engineering. I remember coming up with this whole thing and proposing it to him. And he was like, no, this is not what I want at all. And I was like, oh, and it was a huge like gut check for me of like, oh man, I like, again, really in this new role, I did a bad job. But I mean, he didn't say it that way. He was just like, this is not what I'm looking for. So, after, conversation of, okay, well, what are you looking for? We fixed it and we made it work. And so I was able to take this thing that was very wrong and actually make it right, and rolled it out, and it did well. And then it also became to give me a little more confidence of saying, so well, another time I did it and I really believed in something that I created the first time I did it, right? Like I created a process, wasn't really sold on it, ended up not being right, had to rework it. Another time I came up with a process. And I really believed in it and I really thought it would work. And I remember it was a hiring process, and my manager was like, I don't really think so. I'm like, can we just try? Like, just try, right? Like, let's just try it, see if it works. If it doesn't, then you were right. We'll fix it. But I think that this is the right thing to do. And he agreed, again, had my back, trusted me, and it worked, right? And so then I built that confidence of, okay, there's times where I'm going to do it the wrong way, have to redo it, and that's fine. And then there's times where I'm going to find the right balance of pushing back and just saying, you don't have to agree with me, but I think we should do this. And that's something that I do with my team now, right? So sometimes I'll give feedback and I literally will write to them. You don't have to agree with me. These are just my thoughts, but let me know what you think. And sometimes they go, oh, I agree. And sometimes they're like, nah, Nicole, I don't think that's a good idea. And I respect that, right? And then if it ends up being not a great idea or a great idea, then we talk about it later. But allowing also that I have authority to push back, but I also respect your opinion, and we can move forward with the ideas presented.
Yeah, empowering the next set.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so much fun just chatting with you, Nicole. So tell me this, okay, you're a mom of 3 and you juggle multiple
Yes.
things. Any advice that you would have for your children when they grow up and when they start their new families? Right?
Yeah, I would say, again, something I did from the beginning. I've always been strong-willed. My mother always told me I always knew what I wanted. So I have that blessing for myself. But it's just going in. I have a lot of friends and things who didn't have more honest and open conversations about their careers and their work life that they wanted. And that's hurting them. It's hurted them, throughout their growth and growing a family and at work. My thing with my kids would be like, what do you want, right? Before you start a family, understand, is work really important to you? Is that how you want to, is that what you feel good in, right? And you want to identify as being a working mother or even a working father. And find a partner early on that agrees. Now, you don't have to make these crazy decisions when you're dating, but like when you go to get married, that partner needs to be aligned with your family goals. And maybe you don't have kids, but if you do, it's important to be aligned. And I think that's super important. And then to constantly be checking in, like I said, we're constantly having the conversation of who's the main caregiver at any time, because our jobs are changing, our roles are changing. My kids are 2 to 9 and their lives are changing too, right? They require different attention from us from time to time. So that, and the last thing I would say is, and this is by, again, my mentor, my old manager gave me, is everyone is replaceable. Yes. And so you could show up and work your butt off. You could miss all your kids' activities and you could be fired the next day. Your role could be eliminated. Or they just want someone new and they bring someone. So taking that time and stopping work and walking away is super important, because the time with your children, you're never going to get back, especially when they're growing up. But the time at your job, you could give that time to this company or this company. The company cares about you, but again, everyone is replaceable. So making sure that it's not the center of your world. It can be an important part of your world, but that your job is not the center of your world.
Yeah, true. And being deliberate about what you want, and your goals could change with phases of life, right? Like what you're thinking of at 20 may not be relevant at 30.
Totally.
And be even more relevant at 40, and something else may come up. But taking the time to step back and weigh and see, hey, which way am I headed? Is this making me happy? What are my priorities right now? And be deliberate about it, right? Like I was talking to another woman leader at one point, and she said she does a monthly one-on-one with her, like a QBR with herself. So
Oh, cool.
yeah,
I
I
like
thought
that.
that was a very cool idea. And she's like, well, if you can do that for your work, you can do that for you should do it for your personal life too.
Yeah, I love it. It's dedicated time as well, right? Because if you're a mom of multiple kids working, or even a father of multiple kids are working, like you don't have dedicated space for that. But like making it on the calendar, last month of the quarter, I love that idea.
Very nice, Nicole. It's been such a lovely time chatting with you.
Yes.
Any one actually I do. While talking to you, I recognize you mentioned that you've always been strong-willed, so that's a superpower you have. But other than that, is there any other thing that you feel like led to your success or led to who you are today?
Yeah. So I think the one thing and I talked about this in a town hall once at IPSY, but the one thing that I think has really propelled me to where I am and the success that I've had and the knowledge and experience that I've gained is I'm kind of a yes girl in the sense that like people come to me with new ideas or thoughts, and I'm always like, they're like, "Do you want to try this?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, always." And I don't say this in the way, when I give this advice to people, I'm like, I tell them don't overextend yourself, right? Like don't drown yourself by taking on more. But every once in a while, do say yes so that you can get new experiences and try new things, right? And if it doesn't work out, you tried it, you don't like it, but like my experience, it's like, do you want to do vendor management? Sure, yes. Do you want to run the budget for, a 500-person team? Sure, yes, I want to try that, and learn and grow and get that experience. Has really led me to kind of all the different roles I've gotten and ultimately where I want to go, which is, being a COO and running an organization and running a company. And needing those experiences is going to be important, or having those experiences is going to be important. So I would say that. And then one superpower though that enables me to do that is I drink a lot of caffeine, so I work really quickly. My boss is always like, "How are you always doing all these things?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just, so I have this ability to be able to, context switch easily, just work quickly, which I think helps with the many hats that I wear. But yeah, so I just always encourage people to say yes a little bit more and get a little uncomfortable and try something new.
Okay, that's my takeaway from this conversation, because I feel like I need to do that a little more. A lot of times we try to save ourselves and our bandwidth and focus
Yes.
on the 4 or 5 things that I have specified as my priorities for the year, for this phase of my life, or whatever. But yes, saying more yeses once in a while exposes you to new things and fun
Exactly.
things.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Great, super nice, Nicole. Very thrilled to hear all of your thoughts and experiences, advice, everything. Thank you so much for being on our podcast, Nicole, and I look forward to seeing you another time.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful. Thank you.